When we talk about Muslim women, most people have a superficial idea based on stereotypes and myths. But what many don't know is that behind the veil and the apparent submission, there are secrets and aspects that are rarely mentioned in public law. In this episode, we will reveal the most morbid and hidden things that Muslim women don't want you to know. From polygamy, harems, and strict behavior rules, to repressed desires and power dynamics hidden behind the doors of their homes. Before we continue, if you like discovering the most shocking and hidden secrets of different cultures, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and like this video. Don't miss any of our episodes full of information that few dare to tell. Polygamy is more common than you think in Islam. A man can have up to 4 wives at the same time, as long as he can support them financially and treat them equally. This means that in some communities, women have to share their husband and compete with each other for his attention and affection. Although many Muslim women defend this practice as something normal within their culture, the reality is that not all agree with being part of a multiple marriage. Some accept it due to social pressure or for fear of being left without financial support, while others try to rebel against this tradition. For many, polygamy is not a choice, but an imposition disguised as divine will. Yet, what few dare to admit is that within these marriages, power struggles and rivalry between wives can be more intense than we imagine. Modern harems, reality or myth? If you think of a harem, you probably imagine a palace full of beautiful women waiting for a single man. Although this concept seems a thing of the past, the reality is that in some parts of the Muslim world, modern harems still exist. In the richest countries of the Middle East, the most powerful men have not only multiple wives, but also concubines and women who live exclusively to satisfy their desires. These women are not always treated like prisoners, but their life is completely controlled by the rules and desires of the man who owns them. Even in today's world, there are sheikhs, princes, and billionaires who manage their love life as if they were sultans of a bygone era. While some of these women enjoy luxury and privileges, others are trapped in a system where they have no voice or vote. How free can a woman be in an environment where her role is defined by the will of a single man? That is the question that many Muslim women ask themselves in private, but few dare to answer in public. Although polygamy and harems are some of the most known aspects of the life of many Muslim women, there are many more realities, hidden issues that few dare to mention. Control over sexuality, the repression of desire, and the strict rules governing women's behavior are topics that rarely come to light. The silent desire, sexual repression in Muslim culture. In many Muslim societies, pleasure and sexual exploration are taboos, especially for women. From an early age, girls are educated to suppress any sign of desire or interest in sex, while men have more freedoms in this aspect. Virginity is an absolute requirement for marriage. Many women face the pressure to prove their purity, and in some cases, they undergo hymen reconstruction surgeries to avoid being rejected by their future husbands. Premarital relationships are forbidden in some countries. If a woman is discovered having relations before marriage, she can be repudiated by her family or even face more severe punishments. Female pleasure is ignored. Many Muslim women grow up without receiving information about their own body and their needs. Sex education is virtually non-existent, and discussing these topics is considered a lack of modesty. Arranged marriage, love or business. Marriage in many Muslim cultures is not just a union between two people, but an agreement between families. Often women have no say in the choice of their husband, and their marriages are arranged. Since the beginning of time, families have sought economic and social alliances more than emotional compatibility. Some women marry much older men to ensure financial stability. Divorce is seen as a failure for the woman, while for the man it is a viable option without as many social repercussions. This generates a large number of unhappy marriages, where women must settle for a life without love or desire, only fulfilling social expectations. The confinement of wives, freedom, or golden prison. Many Muslim women, especially in the most conservative countries, live under strict isolation rules. They cannot go out alone without the company of a man from their family. In some regions, they need the husband's permission to study, work, or travel. The veil and conservative clothing are mandatory, not as a choice, but as a social imposition. Although some defend these rules as part of their culture and faith, many others suffer in silence from the lack of freedom and extreme control over their daily lives. These practices may seem archaic and extreme, but they remain in force in many countries and communities. As the world progresses, millions of women remain trapped in a system where their desire and freedom are forbidden topics. What few dare to admit is that behind the obedience and the appearance of their submission, many desire something more: the right to decide about their own body and their own life. If you thought that the restrictions imposed on Muslim women were limited to marriage and their daily lives, there is still much to discover. There are unwritten rules and imposed expectations that affect all aspects of their existence, from the way they walk to how they should behave in intimacy. Sexual education, the great taboo, one of the most censored topics in many Muslim communities, is sexual education. It is considered a shameful topic that women should not talk about or learn, which generates total ignorance about their own body and their rights. Girls do not receive information about their menstrual cycle. Many grow up believing that menstruation is a shame, something dirty that should not be talked about or asked. They are taught that sex is an obligation, not a pleasure. Female pleasure is considered unnecessary or irrelevant in many communities, reinforcing the idea that their only duty is to satisfy their husband. Myths about virginity and the hymen. Some women come to marriage without knowing that bleeding in the first relationship is not a real indicator of virginity, which leads many to suffer abuses or unfounded suspicions. The woman's body, property of the family and society. Beyond religious norms, the control of the woman's body belongs not only to her husband, but also to her family and society in general. From a young age, they are taught to dress decently to avoid provoking others. Men are often blamed for harassment or abuse, with the fault falling on women for not behaving as they should. Women cannot make decisions about their health without a man's permission. In some countries, if a woman needs a medical procedure, she must have the approval of her husband or father. Pregnancy and motherhood are mandatory. Women cannot decide whether or not they want to have children. They are expected to be mothers without question. The secret fantasies of Muslim women. Despite the restrictions and control, many Muslim women have desires and fantasies that they can never openly express. Romantic novels and Western series are a secret escape route. Many women consume forbidden content where they see more egalitarian and passionate relationships reflected. Social networks allow for the anonymous exploration of desire. Although they officially cannot express interest in other men, many use secret profiles to connect with the outside world. The desire for rebellion grows in silence. Although few can take drastic actions, more and more women are finding ways to challenge the system, whether in small acts of autonomy or in major decisions like fleeing their community. Muslim women live under a system that controls not only their actions, but also their thoughts and emotions. Although many accept these norms out of fear or habit, the reality is that dissatisfaction and the desire for freedom are more present than is believed. In an increasingly connected world, the best-kept secret is that many Muslim women are not as submissive as they seem. Their forbidden thoughts, desires, and longings reflect an internal struggle that will sooner or later seek its own liberation. The restrictions and norms imposed on Muslim women not only affect their sexual and emotional lives, but also have a profound impact on their role within society. Their freedom of movement and their personal aspirations. In this episode, we will explore how these rules determine their work, educational life, and even their relationship with technology and modernity. Is work and financial independence a privilege or a right? In many Muslim societies, women's access to work is limited or conditioned by cultural and religious norms. The husband or family must authorize a woman to work. In many countries, women need a man's permission to get a job or start a business. Job opportunities are restricted. In some places, they can only work in specific areas such as education or health, while other sectors are forbidden to them. Professionally successful women can be frowned upon in conservative communities. A woman who earns more than her husband or who has a prominent career can be singled out for challenging traditional roles. Work not only represents a means of subsistence, but also a form of autonomy. Economic independence is something many women cannot escape from abusive marriages or oppressive family environments. Education, a double-edged sword, is a complex issue for women in the Muslim world. While some nations have promoted female schooling, there are still enormous barriers in others for their access to higher education. Girls may be forced to drop out of school to get married. In many communities, the priority is not for the woman to study, but to get married soon and fulfill her role in the home. Universities may be segregated by gender in some countries. Women study in institutions separate from men, which limits their interaction with the outside world. The more educated women can be seen as a threat. Some families believe that an educated woman is more likely to challenge established norms and disobey imposed rules. Education empowers women and gives them tools to question their environment. That's why, in the strictest regimes, limiting their access to knowledge is a key strategy to keep them under control. The use of technology, a window to the world or a threat to tradition. Social networks and the internet have allowed many Muslim women to have a connection with the outside world that was previously unthinkable. Some women use fake profiles to interact without being watched. This allows them to meet people outside from their family circle, and learning about forbidden topics. Access to information generates a cultural shock. Many women discover through the internet that in other parts of the world, the norms are different, and they begin to question the restrictions imposed on them by families and authorities. They try to control access to technology. In some countries, the use of social networks is monitored, and women can be punished for interacting with strangers or for uploading photos that do not comply with dress standards. Despite attempts at censorship, globalization has allowed more and more Muslim women to become informed, to question, and in some cases, to rebel against the system that oppresses them. Access to work, education, and technology are tools of liberation, but they also represent a threat to patriarchal structures that seek to keep women in a submissive role. More and more Muslim women are using these means to gain autonomy and redefine their role in society, even if this means confronting tradition and risking punishment. The struggle between modernity and traditional norms continues, and many women find themselves at the center of this conflict, seeking a balance between their cultural identity and their desire for freedom. Throughout this series, we have explored the multiple facets of Muslim women's lives, from restrictions on their sexuality to their struggle for access to education and work. But if there is a topic that encapsulates all these realities, it is the clash between tradition and modernity, the desire for freedom and the structures that seek to keep them under control. Muslim women in the modern era, freedom or more restrictions? In today's world, Muslim women find themselves at a turning point. On one hand, they have more access to information, education, and opportunities than ever before. On the other, they continue to face cultural and religious barriers that prevent them from fully exercising their rights. Social networks have been a revolution in their lives. Many women use Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter to share their experiences, connect with others in similar situations, and question imposed norms. Feminist movements in Muslim countries have grown. More and more women are organizing to protest against laws that limit their rights, despite the risk of reprisals. However, in some places, repression has also increased. Governments and families have implemented stricter measures to prevent women from deviating from the traditional path. This clash between progress and tradition leaves many women in a difficult position. They want to move forward, but the system does not allow them to do so easily. The double life of many Muslim women. For many women, the only way to balance their desire for freedom with the conditions imposed by the living a double life in society, they are the exemplary daughter, wife or mother that the community expects. They dress according to the norms, meet religious expectations, and obey the rules imposed by their families. In private, they explore their identity and desires. Some have secret profiles on social networks. Others study in secret or maintain relationships outside of marriage without anyone knowing. Trips abroad are an opportunity for escape. Many young Muslim women, especially those with access to international education, take advantage of trips to experience life outside the surveillance of their families. But living with this level of concealment is not easy. Women who are discovered face reprisals that can range from social isolation to physical punishments or exile. The role of the family, protection or control, is one of the most complicated aspects in the life of a Muslim woman. For many, the family represents love and support, but it can also be a source of repression and extreme surveillance. Conservative families see their role as guardians of the woman's honor. This means that any deviation from the established norms can be severely punished. The control extends to the couple. In many marriages, women still have no voice in important decisions and are obliged to obey their husbands in all aspects of life. More open families are beginning to change. Some allow their daughters to study, work, and choose their partners. However, these cases remain the minority in many Muslim societies. The difference between a progressive family and a conservative one can determine whether a woman has the opportunity to pursue her dreams, or if she will be trapped in a cycle of submission and control. The price of rebellion. Women who have defied the norms despite the risks. There are women who have decided to challenge the system. Some have heard, others have eaten from within, and a few have managed to change the rules. Women who escaped from forced marriages. Many have sought refuge in countries where women's rights are more respected. Activists who face repressive regimes have exposed abuses within their societies and have worked for change, often at the cost of their safety. Businesswomen and academics who have broken barriers. Some have managed to establish businesses or lead feminist movements without renouncing their faith or their cultural identity. The path of rebellion is not easy. Many of these women have been persecuted, imprisoned, or even murdered for defying the norms. But their struggle has paved the way for others to dare to question the system. The future of Muslim women is not written in stone. The world changes, societies evolve, and there are more and more voices demanding equality and freedom. The new generations are more connected than ever. The young women today's Muslim women have access to information that their mothers and grandmothers could never have imagined. The fight for equality is growing in some Muslim countries, and laws are slowly changing to allow more rights for women. However, challenges persist. Patriarchy and religious norms continue to be difficult obstacles to overcome. The reality is that Muslim women are not a homogeneous group. Some defend traditions, others seek modernization, and many find themselves somewhere in between. The only thing that is clear is that the conversation about their rights and their future will not stop. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the hidden truth of Muslim women. If you liked this series, subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and activate the bell for more exclusive content. See you in the next video. Music.